Vampires and Vampirism, by Dudley Wright, preface. The awakened interest in supernatural phenomena which has taken place in recent years has included in its wake the absorbing subject of vampirism, yet there has not been any collection published of vampire stories which are common to all the 5 continents of the globe. The subject of vampirism is regarded more seriously today than it was even a decade since, and an attempt has been made in this volume to supply as far as possible all the instances which could be collected from the various countries. How far a certain amount of scientific truth may underneath even what may be regarded as the most extravagant stories must necessarily be, for the present, at any rate, an open question, but he would indeed be a bold man who would permit his skepticism as to the objective existence of vampires in the past or the possibility of vampirism in the future to extend to a categorical denial. If this collection of stories helps, even in a slight degree, to the elucidation of the problem, the book will not have been written in vain. Chapter 1. Introductory. What is a vampire? The definition given in Webster's International Dictionary is a blood-sucking ghost or reanimated body of a dead person. A soul or reanimated body of a dead person believed to come from the grave and wander about by night sucking the blood of persons asleep, causing their death. Whitney's Century Dictionary says that a vampire is a kind of spectral body which, according to a superstition existing among the Slavic and other races on the lower Danube, leaves the grave during the night and maintains a semblance of life by sucking the warm blood of living men and women while they are asleep. Dead wizards, werewolves, heretics, and other outcasts become vampires, as do also the illegitimate offspring of parents themselves illegitimate, and anyone killed by a vampire. According to the Encyclopedia Britannica, the persons who turn vampires are generally wizards, suicides, and those who come to a violent end or have been cursed by their parents or by the church. But anyone may become a vampire if an animal, especially a cat, leaps over the corpse or a bird flies over it. Among the specialists, the writers upon vampire lore and legend, 2 definitions may be quoted. A. Hurst, who says that a vampire is a dead body which continues to live in the grave which it leaves, however, by night, for the purpose of sucking the blood of the living, whereby it is nourished and preserved in good condition, instead of becoming decomposed like other dead bodies. And Scoffern, who wrote, the best definition I can give of a vampire is a living mischievous and murderous dead body. A living dead body. The words are idle, contradictory, incomprehensible, but so are vampires. Vampires, says the learned Zophius, come out of their graves in the night time, rush upon people sleeping in their beds, suck out all their blood and destroy them. They attack men, women, and children, sparing neither age nor sex. Those who are under the malignity of their influence complain of suffocation and a total deficiency of spirits, after which they soon expire. Some of them being asked at the point of death what is the matter with them, their answer is that such persons lately dead rise to torment them. Not all vampires, however, are, or were, suckers of blood. Some, according to the records, dispatched their victims by inflicting upon them contagious diseases, or strangling them without drawing blood, or causing their speedy or retarded death by various other means. Messrs. Skeet and Blagden, in Pagan Races of the Malay Peninsula, Volume I, p. 473, state that a vampire, according to the view of Sakai of Perak, is not a demon even though it is incidentally so called but a being of flesh and blood, and support this view by the statement that the vampire cannot pass through walls and hedges. The word vampire, Dutch, vampierposh, wampir or Upper Slovenian, Upper Ukraine, Upir, is held by Skeet to be derived from the Servian wampira, the Russians, Morlakians, inhabitants of Montenegro, Bohemians, Servians, Amants, both of Hydra and Albania, know the vampire under the name of Wako Dalek, Verkulaka, or Vrikulaka, a word which means walk fairy, and is thought by some to be derived from the Greek. In Crete, where Slavonic influence has not been felt, the vampire is known by the name of Katak, and vampire lore is, in general, confined to stories of resuscitated corpses of male human beings, though amongst the Malays a Penamba, or vampire, is a living witch. who can be killed if she can be caught in the act of witchery. She is especially feared in houses where a birth has taken place, and it is the custom to hang up a bunch of thistle in order to catch her. She is said to keep vinegar at home to aid her in re-entering her own body. In the Malay Peninsula, parts of Pal 5 Niagia and the neighboring districts, the vampire is conceived as a head with entrails attached, which comes forth to suck the blood of living human beings. In Transylvania, the belief prevails that every person killed by an Nosferatu vampire becomes in turn a vampire, and will continue to suck the blood of other innocent people until the evil spirit has been exorcised, either by opening the grave of the suspected person and driving a stake through the corpse, or firing a pistol shot into the coffin. In very obstinate cases it is further recommended to cut off the head, fill the mouth with garlic, and then replace the head in its proper place in the coffin, or else to extract the heart and burn it, and strew the ashes over the grave. The Murani of the Wallachians not only sucks blood, but also possesses the power of assuming a variety of shapes, as, for instance, those of a cat, dog, flea, or spider, in consequence of which the ordinary evidence of death caused by the attack of a vampire, viz. the mark of a bite in the back of the neck, is not considered indispensable. The Wallachians have a very great fear of sudden death, greater perhaps than any other people, for they attribute sudden death to the attack of a vampire, and believe that anyone destroyed by a vampire must become a vampire, and that no power can save him from this fate. A similar belief obtains in northern Albania, where it is also held that a wandering spirit has power to enter the body of any individual guilty of undetected crime, and that such obsession forms part of his punishment. Some writers have ascribed the origin of the belief in vampires to Greek Christianity, but there are traces of the superstition and belief at a considerably earlier date than this. In the opinion of the anthropologist Tyler, the shortest way of treating the belief is to refer it directly to the principles of savage animism. We shall see that most of its details fall into their places at once, and that vampires are not mere creations of groundless fancy, but causes conceived in spiritual form to account for specific facts of wasting disease. It is more than probable that the practice of offering up living animals as sacrifices to satisfy the thirst of departed human beings, combined with the ideas of the Platonist and the teachings of the learned Jew, Isaac Arbonel, who maintained that before the soul can be loosed from the fetters of the flesh it must be some months with it in the grave, may have influenced the belief and assisted its development. Vampirism found a place in Babylonian belief and in the folklore and traditions of many countries of the Near East. The belief was quite common in Arabia, although there is no trace of it there in pre-Christian times. The earliest references to vampires are found in Chaldean and Assyrian tablets. Later, the pagan Romans gave their adherents to the belief that the dead bodies of certain people could be allured from their graves by sorcerers, unless the bodies had actually undergone decomposition, and that the only means of effectually preventing such resurrections was by cremating the remains. In Grecian lore there are many wonderful stories of the dead rising from their graves and feasting upon the blood of the young and beautiful. From Greece and Rome the superstition spread throughout Austria, Hungary, Lorraine, Poland, Romania, Iceland, and even to the British Isles, reaching its height in the period from 1723 to 1735, when a vampire fever or epidemic broke out in the southeast of Europe, particularly in Hungary and Serbia. The belief in vampires even spread to Africa, where the Kafirs held that bad men alone live a second time and try to kill the living by night. According to a local superstition of the lesbians, the unquiet ghost of the Virgin Jello used to haunt their island, and was supposed to cause the deaths of young children. Various devices have been resorted to in different countries at the time of burial, in the belief that the dead could thus be prevented from returning to earth life. In some instances, e.g., among the Wallachians, a long nail was driven through the skull of the corpse, and the thorny stem of a wild rose bush laid upon the body, in order that its shroud might become entangled with it, should it attempt to rise. The Croats and Slavonians burned the straw upon which the suspected body lay. They then locked up all the cats and dogs, for if these animals stepped over the corpse it would assuredly return as a vampire and suck the blood of the village folk. Many held that to drive a white thorn stake through the dead body rendered the vampire harmless, and the peasants of Koblenz still retained the practice of driving an ash stake through the breasts of suicides and supposed vampires, a practice common in England, so far as suicides were concerned, until 1823, when there was passed an act to alter and amend the law relating to the interment of the remains of any person found, in which it was enacted that the coroner or other officer shall give directions for the private interment of the remains of such person, fellow to say, without any stake being driven through the body of such person. It was also ordained that the burial was only to take place between 9 and 12 o'clock at night. The driving of a stake through the body does not seem to have had always the desired effect. Deschartres, in his Megiapostema, published at Olmutz in 1706, tells of a shepherd in the village of Blow, near Kadam, in Bohemia, who made several appearances after his death and called certain persons, who never failed to die within 8 days of such call. The peasants of Blow took up the body and fixed it to the ground by means of a stake driven through the corpse. The man, when in that condition, told them that they were very good to give him a stick with which he could defend himself against the dogs, which worried him. Notwithstanding the stake, he got up again that same night, alarmed many people, and, presumably out of revenge, strangled more people in that one night than he had ever done on a single occasion before. It was decided to hand over his body to the public executioner, who was ordered to see that the remains were burned outside the village. When the executioner and his assistants attempted to move the corpse for that purpose, it howled like a madman, and moved its feet and hands as though it were alive. They then pierced the body through with stakes, but he again uttered loud cries and a great quantity of bright vermilion blood flowed from him. The cremation, however, put an end to the apparition and haunting of the spectre. Deschartres says that the only remedy for these apparitions is to cut off the heads and burn the bodies of those who come back to haunt their former abodes. It was, however, customary to hold a public inquiry and examination of witnesses before proceeding to the burning of a body, and if, upon examination of the body, it was found that the corpse had begun to decompose, that the limbs were not supple and mobile, and the blood not fluidic, then burning was not commanded. Even in the case of suspected persons, an interval of 6 to 7 weeks was always allowed to lapse before the grave was opened in order to ascertain whether the flesh had decayed and the limbs lost their suppleness and mobility. A Strigon or Indian vampire, who was transfixed with a sharp thorn cudgel, near Larbach, in 1672, pulled it out of his body and flung it back contemptuously. Bartholomew, in the Causa Contemptutis Mortis, tells the story of a man, named Harpi, who ordered his wife to bury him exactly at the kitchen door, in order that he might see what went on in the house. The woman executed her commission, and soon after his death he appeared to several people in the neighborhood, killed people while they were engaged in their occupations, and played so many mischievous pranks that the inhabitants began to move away from the village. At last a man named Delaspa took courage and ran at the spectre with a lance, which he drove into the apparition. The spectre instantly vanished, taking the spear with it. Next morning Delas had the grave of Harpi opened. When he found the lance in the dead body, which had not become corrupted, the corpse was then taken from the grave, burned, and the ashes thrown into the sea, and the spectre did not afterwards trouble the inhabitants to cross the arms of the corpse, or to place a cross or crucifix upon the grave, or to bury a suspected corpse at the junction of 4 crossroads, was, in some parts, regarded as an efficacious preventive of vampirism. It will be remembered that it was at one time the practice in England to bury suicides at the 4 crossroads. If a vampire should make its appearance, it could be prevented from ever appearing again by forcing it to take the oath not to do so. If the words "by my winding sheet" were incorporated in the oath, one charm employed by the Wallachians to prevent a person becoming a vampire was to rub the body in certain parts with the lard of a pig killed on St. Ignatius's Day. In Poland and Russia, vampires make their appearance from noon to midnight instead of between nightfall and dawn. The rule that generally prevails: they come and suck the blood of living men and animals in such abundance that sometimes it flows from them at the nose and ears, and occasionally in such profusion that the corpse swims in the blood, thus oozing from it as it lies in the coffin. One may become immune from the attacks of vampires by mixing this blood with flour and making bread from the mixture. a portion of which must be eaten, otherwise the charm will not work. The Californians held that the mere breaking of the spine of the corpse was sufficient to prevent its return as a vampire. Sometimes heavy stones were piled on the grave to keep the ghost within, a practice to which Fraser traces the origin of funeral cairns and tombstones. Two resolutions of the Sorbonne, passed between 1700 and 1710, prohibited the cutting off of the heads and the maiming of the bodies of persons supposed to be vampires. In the German folk tale known as Faithful John, the statue said to the king, "If you, with your own hand, cut off the heads of both your children and sprinkle me with their blood, I shall be brought to life again." According to primitive ideas, blood is life, and to receive blood is to receive life. The soul of the dead wants to live, and, consequently, loves blood. The shades in Hades are eager to drink the blood of Odysseus' sacrifice, that their life may be renewed for a time. It is of the greatest importance that the soul should get what it desires, as, if not satisfied, it might come and attack the living. It is possible that the bodily mutilations which to this day accompany funerals among some peoples have their origin in the belief that the departed spirit is refreshed by the blood thus spilt. The Samoans called it an offering of blood for the dead when the mourners beat their heads till the blood ran. The Australian native sorcerers are said to acquire their magical influence by eating human flesh, but this is done once only in a lifetime. According to Neidler's Formicarius, part of the ceremony of initiation into wizardry and witchcraft consisted in drinking in a church, before the commencement of Mass, from a flask filled with blood taken from the corpses of murdered infants. The methods employed for the detection of vampires have varied according to the countries in which the belief in their existence was maintained. In some places it was held that, if there were discovered in a grave 2 or 3 or more holes about the size of a man's finger, it would almost certainly follow that a body with all the marks of vampirism would be discovered within the grave. The Wahochans employed a rather elaborate method of divination. They were in the habit of choosing a boy young enough to make it certain that he was innocent of any impurity. He was then placed on an absolutely black and unmutilated horse which had never stumbled. The horse was then made to ride about the cemetery and pass over all the graves. If the horse refused to pass over any grave, even in spite of repeated blows, the grave was believed to shelter a vampire. Their records state that when such a grave was opened it was generally found to contain a corpse as fat and handsome as that of a full-blooded man quietly sleeping. The finest vermilion blood would flow from the throat when cut, and this was held to be the blood he had sucked from the veins of living people. It is said that the attacks of the vampire generally ceased on this being done. In the town of Pearl, between Monastery and Jupiter, there existed the extraordinary phenomenon of a number of families who were regarded as being the offspring of Vrykalakas, and as possessing the power of laying the wandering spirits to which they were related. They are said to have kept their art very dark and to have practiced it in secret, but their fame was so widely spread that persons in need of such deliverance were accustomed to send for them from other cities. In ordinary life and intercourse they were avoided by all the inhabitants, although some have contended that no vampire has yet been caught in the act of vampirism, and that, as no museum of natural history has secured a specimen, the whole of the stories concerning vampires may be regarded as mythical. Others have held firmly to a belief in their existence and inimical power. Dr. Pirard, in La Revue Spiritualiste, Volume 4, p. 104, wrote, "After a crowd of facts of vampirism so often proved, shall we say that there are no more to be had, and that these never had a foundation? Nothing comes of nothing. Every belief, every custom, springs from facts and causes which give it birth." If one had never seen appear in the bosom of their families, in various countries, beings clothed in the appearance of departed ones known to them, sucking the blood of one or more persons, and if the deaths of the victims had not followed after such apparitions, the disinterment of corpses would not have taken place, and there would never have been the attestation of the otherwise incredible fact of persons buried for several years being found with the body soft and flexible, the eyes wide open, the complexion rosy, the mouth and nose full of blood, and the blood flowing fully when the body was struck or wounded or the head cut off. Bishop de Vranges Huet wrote, "I will not examine whether the facts of vampirism, which are constantly being reported, are true, or the fruit of a popular error, but it is beyond doubt that they are testified to by so many able and trustworthy authors, and by so many eyewitnesses, that no one ought to decide the question without a good deal of caution. Dr. Pirard gave the following explanation of their existence: poor, dead, cataleptics, buried as if really dead in cold and dry spots where morbid causes are incapable of effecting the destruction of their bodies. The astral spirit, enveloping itself with a fluid ethereal body, is prompted to quit the precincts of its tomb and to exercise on living bodies acts peculiar to physical life, especially that of nutrition, the result of which, by a mysterious link between soul and body which spiritualistic science will someday explain, is forwarded to the material body lying still within its tomb, and the latter is thus helped to perpetuate its vital existence. Apart from the specter vampire there is, of course, the vampire bat in the world of natural history, which is said to suck blood from a sleeping person, insinuating its tongue into a vein, but without inflicting pain. Captain Stedman, during his expedition to Suriname, awoke early one morning and was alarmed to find his hammock steeped almost through and himself weltering in blood. Although he was without pain, it was discovered that he had been bitten by a vampire bat. Pennant says that in some parts of America they destroyed all the cattle introduced by the missionaries.